Okay, cool. Oh, wow, I did not realize there was this many people. I'm already like, this is great. So I'm going to talk about Azure Machine Learning Studio. I'm not going to be saying those words again. It's going to be AML from now on because it is so many words. But the whole idea around it is talking about zero code solutions and essentially how you can do machine learning without really having to work for it, because that's kind of what I'm doing. So if you've never heard me do a talk before, settle in. We're going to dive really, really deep. If you have, you know what's coming up next. So we're going to start talking about me. That's how we always start. It's great. It's all worked really, really well. So my name's Akansha. I work at Telstra Purple as a junior data scientist. And I'm from Ireland. This is me being flamboyantly Irish. And you'll start hearing the accent soon. And it'll start making sense a little bit more. So I can talk really, really fast. And I know there's a lot to get through today as well. So I can end up doing that. If people don't understand, can you just put your hand up at one stage and I'll slow down and make it a little bit easier? It'll be great. I don't want anyone leaving not knowing what's happening. So I study financial maths and actuarial science. I never really did too much coding in there. Did a bit of R, did a bit of Python, and I ended up becoming a data scientist where it's all just coding at the moment. So that's great. But last November, I got to go to Ignite. And that's a photo of me from Ignite where they drew a photo of me and they called me the data queen. I don't think you can see that, but that's how I want people to refer to me from now on. Just pointing it out. But also while I was there was a bunch of machine learning topics on and loads of sessions. So I found myself there and found out about this new product that they're releasing, and it's now in public preview, which is the AML Studio. And so yeah, when I was there, we got a bunch of different things. And that's what today's agenda is. What I want you to be able to leave today is feeling like you kind of know how to create a model with using no code. And maybe you can go do it and tell me about it. My Twitter's there. This is a self-plug, shameless self-plug. Go follow and tell me that you did this. It'll be really good for me that I've actually imparted some kind of help. And also just that how AML is actually enabling different skill levels across the industry to help get everyone involved with machine learning. So if you think about AI in the market at the moment, it's everywhere. Everyone wants AI, it's the new buzz thing. Every single customer that comes in is like, yeah, just give us the smart stuff, just AI. But it's not that easy. There's so many different challenges involved with it from people. Like data scientist is one of the biggest jobs you can like, yeah, everyone wants a data scientist. But at the same time, there's so many different variations of data scientists. Maybe you're a person who does R, maybe just Python. Those are just the first two little branches, but it just kind of keeps spiraling from there. You might be able to find a data scientist that fits really, really well with your company, but not with your tech stack. So it's always going to be kind of a little struggle trying to get people involved. As well as that, the process is trying to set up an environment like locally is like just the most awful thing ever. I've done it once, I refuse to ever do it again. Unless someone else wants to come do it for me, I'm like, that's great. You set it up, I'll start working, this is fine. Which is kind of where things like the cloud resources come in really, really handy because everything's ready to go. And across the thing of security and scale, most of the problems that clients come to are, hey, we've got so much data, deal with it. So much data, you should be able to find something out of it. A lot of the problems are big data problems, which lead to scalability and security around the amount of data they have. So with all of this in mind, Azure created Azure Machine Learning Studio. So the whole point around this, and this is like my favorite topic ever, just democratizing AI. If everyone can use AI, makes me very, very happy. All my talks so far have essentially been around, hey, you don't know anything about it? This is great. This is how you can get involved with machine learning. Everyone has data generated on a daily basis about them. Everyone should be able to leverage it. It should not be gatekept behind people who've had to go through 8 years in uni doing PhDs and stuff to try and understand really deep maths when everyone can technically understand a bit of it and be able to leverage it. So let's look at the different products within Machine Learning Studio and where they all kind of sit on a scale of skills and kind of experience. So notebooks and SDKs, those are for the people who have been in the industry. They know their machine learning inside out. They know their coding inside out. They see a data set, they're like, yep, exactly what I want to do. I want to put this library in and then this package, and this is how I want to solve it. That's for them, and that still exists. It's still accessible for people who are in the industry and want to be using it. But on the other end, if you want no code and you have no idea what machine learning is, but you have data and you know that machine learning will help, that's where AutoML comes in. I think once you've got your data in, it's about 3 clicks and you've got a machine learning model going and it tells you what to do next. Everything else is very straightforward and you don't have to click through much more. And in the middle of the two is kind of where designer sits. So you don't really need to be able to code, but you do need to have a bit more experience in machine learning. You need to know maybe about how pipelines are work, right? You need to train the model and then you need to split it out and be able to learn from different things. Those kind of ideas and what type of machine learning model you should be using still needs to exist. So those are the three main parts of AML Studio. And with that, let's set up a scenario for tonight. So what is going to be my data? We're going to pretend I am fabulously rich right now, and I'm going to go to New York next week because I feel like it. But hey, I don't know what prices are going to be like. I want to budget my holiday a little bit. Not that rich yet. So I'm going to stay in Airbnb, and I'd like to kind of be able to predict what the price should be based on where I might want to stay. If I'm staying in Manhattan, what should I be able to expect as a price in an Airbnb there? I have no idea. Maybe my data will tell me. And on the other hand, as much as I've decided to fly to New York next week, I also need to buy a car because Melbourne in public transport is awful, as we've realized in the last month. And so the other part of my scenario here is the fact that I need to come back and buy a car afterwards. So I want to be able to predict how much I should be paying for my car. And with that, I've been praying all day, so let's hope these demos actually work. We're going to jump straight into the portal. So this is where the end all and be all for all of Azure stuff comes in. And if you want to start using the Machine Learning Studio, you open up Machine Learning and you start up a new resource. Usually with Azure, if you've kind of used it a little bit, you'll start realizing they've tried to keep it really, really consistent. So every time you're setting up any new products, any new resources, everything kind of stays the same. So you kind of know exactly what's happening every time you open up something new. The only thing I really want to point out here is the Workspace Edition. Other things like resource groups, you just kind of add in whatever you'd like. There's two types, the basic and the enterprise. Immediately, enterprise sounds like it's going to be really, really expensive. It's not the fact that that is. Everything is, as always, in cloud. You pay for what you use, and it stays at the same rate. Basic only does notebooks. Enterprise Edition is where Designer and AutoML sit. Don't fall for it. I know it sounds expensive, but it isn't. I promise. It cost me like $5 for the last 3 weeks of training on things. It's really, really cheap. It's just the fact that it doesn't offer everything in the basic. So make sure you click Enterprise, because I made the mistake and I couldn't find anything in there. I was like, this, I've been lied to. So once you actually do get it set up, deployment takes about 5 minutes, I think, usually. You end up on a screen like this, and in this giant blue box, it tells you exactly where to go next. It says Launch Now. And this is being really, really slow today. I don't know why, but it is a product under preview, so changes are constantly being made. All these new features keep updating themselves, so keep that in mind if something goes really, really wrong. It's not my fault. As this is usually the homepage you'll end up at. So we're at cloud because we don't want to use our own machines. We want to be able to leverage things. I don't want to go pay $6,000 for a new computer that is supposed to do everything. I don't care about that. Which is where compute comes in. So there's a bunch of different computes you can use in machine learning. I swear, this is the hardest this gets, like trying to get your head around this. This is the worst part of it. There's a bunch of different types of machine compute you can use here. So notebook VMs are essentially just virtual machines that power up your notebooks. If you're going to be using your own notebooks, which are usually based in Jupyter on the studio itself, you'll need to spin one up. Other than that, there's training clusters. So every time you do any kind of AutoML or designers or you're training any kind of a model, this is where the compute resources are going to come from. And when you create one, this is a little handy tip that I was told very recently, because I kept getting charged for things. If you put your minimum number of nodes to 0, it'll always stay at 0 until you use it. So if you're not using any of your power or compute, you're not getting charged. So always keep it down to 0. Put your maximum down to however heavy you want to be able to go. I usually keep it at about 2 or 3, maybe 5 if I'm doing a bunch of different things at the same time. What that means is when you're using it, it'll scale itself up. Otherwise, it won't be charging you anything. And inference clusters are to do with Kubernetes, and I don't know why it kept failing for me today. I think I've got too many of those loaded up at the moment. But yeah, so that's all essentially about deploying all your models and getting APIs to be able to connect to any of your apps and stuff that you might want to put some intelligence behind. So we've got our compute sorted out. We need the data. So this is my Airbnb data that I found online, and I'd like to be able to actually import it into my studio. So you can create a data set from a bunch of different ways. If it's a really light one, like mine currently is, so the Airbnb data set's about 50,000 rows. It's really small in data usually, so I can keep that on my local laptop and upload it. I can also connect it to anything in Azure itself. So SQL database or a data lake, all of these can be connected up, and you can just pop your data directly in from it. If it's somewhere online, you can pop your web link in, your web link, wow, whatever the address is for it, pop it in. And there's also open data sets. If you did want to mess around with a bunch of things in here, but didn't have data or didn't know where to go, loads of free open data sets are available, and it's already preloaded on Azure, so you don't have to go find it yourself. So I'll be loading it in from local files. Sorry, I lied. It's actually connected on my blob store, so I'll be connecting from my data store. And okay, let's do this test. From the blob storage that I've already created. And here I've got that CSV. And what this will do, it'll show you a quick preview of the data itself. Have a quick look through it, looks about right. And on the next stage, you can actually get rid of any of the columns you don't want. You can just drop them straight away, you don't have to deal with them again. You can also check if all your actual data types are correct. I've never really had an issue with it picking it up incorrectly before, but it's always good to check. And once you're happy with that, hit your next, confirm your details, and make sure to click this profile, this data set after creation. So what this does is it'll attach to one of your computes and actually look through the data and understand it and give you a really quick statistical breakdown of your data. So like, right, I will actually just show you what it looks like. I'm going to cancel this because I've already loaded it in. It won't load the duplicate ones, so it'll prevent you from essentially using up a lot more storage than you actually need to. So this is the Airbnb data. If you look at the exploring, it shows you a sample of 1,000 of the 50,000 rows, as well as the profiling that it does. So do quick distribution checks on all the different groups. For example, the number of nights, it's usually going to be minimum nights is 1. In most places in Airbnb, some might have a random number like 37 or a year, you have to say there, which is weird. Probably a fake kind of Airbnb listing up there. So once you have a look at your data, it's all ready to go. I'm like, yep, great. I'm flying out tomorrow morning. I need to know what pricing are going to be like. So I pop into AutoML. And this is where, once you've got your data and your compute set up, that's the hardest part's done for anything along with AutoML. I choose my database, which is my Airbnb. And I name whatever I want to do. Let's just name everything test today. And I will say target price. I want to be able to predict what my price is. So I'll just choose price. Attach it to one of the computes I've already created. And this is the last step of this process where you just need to tell it what kind. And it does do a pretty good job of kind of segregating it out. So classification issues usually, is it this or this? Just bucket everything into these categories. Whereas what I want to be able to do is predict specific numbers for everything. So I want to predict a price for every single listing I have. So I'm going to be doing regression. Or you can actually choose time series as well, where it's based on dates. So you could find data sets which is on this date, this was the price, and you'll be able to actually predict based on time as well. And I click finish. I won't do it because it'll go start another one, and I don't want to do that. But that's essentially all it takes for you to run a machine learning model on this. What this then does, depending on the size of your data set, so mine was 50,000, it took about 45 minutes to run through, I think it ran through about 80 different models in the background, and tried it with a bunch of different hyperparameters, and it gave me this. This took 45 minutes, and it'll tell you what the best model is. And this is where you don't need to care what the model is, because you don't really know what they mean, and it doesn't make a difference, because all you can do is say, deploy my best model. And what this will send it to is your Kubernetes cluster. Don't ask me what anything happens in the background, because I don't need to know and I don't care. But at the end of it, it'll give you the endpoints that you need to connect to any APIs. And that's it. You're good to go with a model that is approximately 82% accurate and describes a lot of the variability in it. You can obviously go back and tune it a bit more to get higher predictability, but it's a demo, I'm happy with it. So moving into Designer, I've got loads of time to go through this now. I can relax. What we can do is actually go through how you'd create from scratch a pipeline in Designer where you kind of know what's happening in machine learning. How many people here have done machine learning? Oh, great, okay. I'm going to start watching my words then. So you can tell me I'm wrong. Let's hope this works. You can never be careful enough. And you connect it to one of your computes. So because I was loading and running a bunch of these different things, I loaded up to 5 nodes on it. So I can run about 5 different things at the same time. So once that's attached, the first thing you're going to do is import your data. So I've used this is the automobile data. So this is me having come back from my holidays and spent way more money than I'd budgeted, because apparently my model wasn't great enough. So I'm like, no. For my car, I really need to be careful about this and make sure I don't spend too much money at this. So pull in this data, and you can actually have a quick look. So if you've profiled your data set, you'll be able to have a quick look as to what's in it. So I've got things like what make is it, fuel type, other car associated things that I don't know and care about, such as a horsepower. I never knew what that meant, don't care. But at the end of it, there's price. That's the one that I'm really interested in. Based on all these different bits of information, can you tell me what price my car should be? Like, yep, that sounds great. Once I've imported the data, what I'd like to be able to do is actually do some kind of transformations on it. Maybe I don't want all the columns in this data set. I just want a few of those. Some of them just don't make sense for me to have in there. So I can connect that up. Once it's connected, I can edit my columns. And the handy little thing is you can include, let's say, all the columns, but maybe I just want to exclude one of them. So column names, I just want maybe normalized losses. I don't think that's going to help anything. It's going to kind of skew the results. Just want it out. That's fine. You can also add comments along the way, which I won't because I cannot type fast enough for this. Once I've gotten that done, what if there's missing data in my data set? I don't know for sure. Let's just get rid of it. If you do anything to do with data, never get rid of data like this. This is awful, but I just want to make my life a little bit simpler. So what we can do is remove missing data. Let's clean the data set out. And yeah, so I don't want to replace. I just want to remove the entire row. That's all good. I'll take it. Once I've removed my data, I'm like, yeah, this is the data set I want. It's pretty clean now. There's no real issues with it. Let's just see where it'll go. What I can do then is do a split. So you can look for specific transformations. I want to split my data out from here. If I don't lose the mark, there we go. The splitting data essentially in machine learning is where it's a machine learning, right? Machine doesn't know anything before you tell it to. So what I'll do is I'll show it 70% of my data, be like, this is what this means. 1 + 1 is 2. Go learn the rest of it. So it'll learn on that, and then on 30%, it'll test itself and see how well it's done. And that's essentially how most pipelines in machine learning will look like. You can choose whatever split you want. I'm going to go with 70%. That's split. And once it's been split, what I'm going to want to do is train my model. Let's train it. And this is the handy thing where it'll tell you, okay, it wants it to be connected to that specific one, because in the first place, you actually have to tell it what model you want to connect it to. You want to train it, but what do you want to train it as? I want to train it as a linear model because this is, again, I just want to predict a specific number with the price. So I want linear regression, and we can connect that over here. And there's still a little bar which tells you, hey, you need to tell me what you want to predict. So it's pretty intuitive in terms of you can't go on anymore. I don't know what you want from me. So I would like price. They still haven't actually popped up the list of columns like they have in every other place yet. I think that feature is still coming, but we'll go with it for now. And once I've trained my model, I'd like to actually be able to score it, which essentially means it will actually read back against the 30% that you haven't seen and the trained data and see how well it actually did compared to the two. So now that it's been trained, unseen data, let's compare how good/bad are you actually doing. And once you've scored, I want an overall evaluation of the whole model itself. And that's a pretty basic pipeline, but that's a usual machine learning pipeline. What's handy about this is like, okay, it's great for someone who maybe doesn't know too much about machine learning in the background, but it's also really good for actual data scientists who are really experienced because it's really quick testing where I can pop in and be like, okay, maybe linear regression is the way, but also maybe this hyperparameter. I can test a bunch of different models here and just connect it up and I'll just go and do it in the background instead of having to sit down and code out my TensorFlows and scikit-learns and create my own pipelines manually. It's really quick and easy testing that can provide for things as well. So if you run this, I won't run it again because I haven't already done this. So this is a run one with really nice comments on it along the way now that I didn't do this time. But once you do run this, in the background, you can actually go in and check how well it did in the score model. It'll load. So at the end, it'll say this was the actual price, and this was what it scored the prices as. So the first view, you can actually see, it's like, it's pretty close enough for cars and stuff. And then it kind of really drops off the mark, where it predicted that the car should be worth about 6,500. It was actually worth 12,500, 13,000 nearly. That could be the model actually being better than the car dealer. Who knows? Is the car dealer just scamming you? Or maybe the model's just wrong. This is quick testing, right? So you can go back in and you can tweak little things, or maybe remove a column, test more hyperparameters, but that's fine. It's okay for me. I think my car and my life with my buying new car might be okay with this. So I can actually also look at the overall model evaluations. They're still working on better visualizations around this. They're kind of still getting there with that. They had much nicer ones in the official demos, and I haven't seen those yet, so I'm still waiting. But overall, as a model for this, the best kind of figure that I usually look at is the coefficient of determination, which is the R squared. All that tells you is, so I'm trying to predict my price, and all the other features that I've put into my model, which are everything else, the horsepowers and the, I don't know, wheels. I don't know anything about cars. But yeah, the model tells me that, hey, all of those things you've used, they explain the variability in the price by about 87%. It's a pretty good explanation of how the price is moving. Like, that's good enough for me, I'll take it. And from here, you can create an inference pipeline. And this is, again, the whole deployment part. So if you create a real-time inference pipeline, once you've actually deployed it and connected up to your APIs or your apps or whatever you've got to go for, literally as soon as you ask for results, it'll start running the model in the background and start popping out results for you really, really quickly. I don't have any idea how you connect all these APIs and stuff, because I don't do that. I don't make apps. I'm sure there will be a talk next month about app making at some stage. Maybe do that one next. Could be handy. But that's kind of where Designer sits at. It's a little bit of a machine learning background, but still absolutely no coding. But if you did want to do coding, you can actually still input little Python models in there or different codes. If it suits you, sure, maybe. But other than that, as a recap, I've been able to predict my Airbnb prices, and apparently not got a really good deal on Airbnb because I was broke, but then did maybe really, really well in getting my car. It's just kind of different variances you can have and how well you can use Azure Machine Learning Studio and how well it's actually being accessible for every single person out there, from no code, or maybe not even any kind of real technology backgrounds, all the way to data scientists who are actually using this on a daily basis to really quickly test things out. So hope people can go home and maybe create their own models and tell me about it. I don't really see many nods. Nods, please just nod. Yes, thank you. This is great. Cheering squad right here. But yeah, that's all from me today. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'll take